Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into some really fascinating source material.
Yeah, it's centered around a psychologist's work.
Right, and it's boiled down into this surprisingly simple, yet, well, incredibly powerful way to understand and handle those, tricky feelings we all bump into.
Mm-hmm. And the big promise here, it's that doing this doesn't just make you feel better.
Right.
It actually builds your confidence, boosts your resilience, and helps you live a life you genuinely love.
What really drew me into this material is how it kind of flips the script on how we usually approach things.
How so?
Well, we often feel stuck, right? Lacking confidence, maybe overwhelmed by uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah.
And our default is usually to try and, wrestle them into submission or push them away or just avoid them altogether.
Exactly. We think strength means controlling the feeling.
Right. That's what we're taught, sort of.
But this work suggests the real transformation isn't in the controlling, it's actually in experiencing the feeling. And here's the kicker, the really interesting part. The intense biological aspect of that feeling. The source says it might only last around, 90 seconds.
90 seconds. Seriously, I could already hear people thinking my anxiety attacks last way longer than that.
And that's the key distinction, The biological surge is brief. The source really dives into why we feel like it lasts forever and how understanding that that brief biological wave can actually change everything.
Okay, now that's where it gets really interesting. So our mission in this deep dive then is to kind of get a shortcut, right? To get well-informed about this specific framework, we're going to explore why we tend to avoid feelings, what those key difficult feelings actually are, the practical tool the source offers to process them, how that avoidance links into things like, anxiety and those unhelpful thinking patterns.
Right, the faulty thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately how facing feelings is, the path to real emotional strength and confidence.
Makes sense. So let's start right at the beginning then. Why is our first instinct usually to run away from difficult feelings?
Well, the source makes it clear it's almost automatic, often unconscious even.
Like a reflex.
So we distract ourselves, we check out, we just sort of, move away from anything unpleasant or uncomfortable.
And the immediate payoff feels good, right?
Yes.
You get that fleeting relief.
Sure.
You sidestep the discomfort, avoid what you might think is losing control.
But the source makes a really powerful point there.
Uh,
That often that fear of losing control isn't really about some wild behavior.
no.
It's often just the fear of feeling something uncomfortable in the first place.
Okay. And that temporary relief, it comes with a pretty significant long-term cost.
Right.
Because by constantly avoiding, you're basically cutting yourself off from crucial emotional data. You're missing signals. And over time, this builds up. It can lead to increased anxiety, sometimes even physical pain, a constant sense of vulnerability, feeling disempowered. And when this avoidance becomes chronic, the source says it can result in this feeling of emptiness, numbness, something it actually calls soulful depression, a really profound disconnection.
Soulful depression. That's intense.
Yeah, and it can spiral into isolation, alienation, even hopelessness.
That disconnection feels so key. The material talks about emotional management disorder in this context.
Right. It uses examples like Liz, who struggled with eating, or others using shopping or maybe drinking or just constantly being on their phone, like the examples of Leah and Cotter.
Distractions.
Exactly. The core insight is that these behaviors, they aren't the root problem. They're often just ways to distract from or avoid these deeper, harder to tolerate emotional reactions.
So the real issue, the source argues, is the inability to just tolerate everyday emotional experiences.
Precisely. People get focused on managing the symptom, the eating, the shopping, instead of the underlying feeling.
Which brings us right back to that fascinating 90 seconds idea. What's
Yeah.
actually happening biologically?
Okay, so the fundamental concept is that a feeling at its most basic level is a temporary biochemical reaction. It's happening in your physical body.
Like a chemical burst, you said.
Yeah, think of it like a wave. Your body reacts to something, releases chemicals, and that biochemical surge, it just moves through you.
Okay.
And according to this work, that core biological wave typically runs its course in about 90 seconds, sometimes even less.
Okay, but I'm still stuck on this. How can a feeling only last 90 seconds when, sometimes I feel overwhelmed by sadness or anger for hours, days even?
Right, and that's the crucial distinction the source makes. The feeling lingers, but not because the original biochemical surge is still going.
So why then?
It's because after that initial wave passes, we get stuck.
Oh.
We get stuck by continuing to avoid it, or by ruminating on it, or by telling ourselves stories about the feeling or the situation that triggered it.
So our thinking keeps it going.
Exactly. Our thinking about the feeling is what keeps that emotional circuit running long after the body's initial response has actually finished.
So the 90-second idea, it's less like a precise stopwatch
Right.
and more like a powerful perspective shift, a mental tool.
Exactly that. It's kind of a metaphor for the brief time it takes to simply turn toward the feeling instead of away from it. It's a reminder you can give yourself, like, okay, this feels really intense right now, but the core biological wave might only be 90 seconds. I can handle 90 seconds.
And the connection between the body and the emotion is really central here.
Absolutely critical. The material emphasizes that our bodily sensations, they often happen first.
Before the thought.
Yeah, and they actually help us identify what we're feeling emotionally. It's like a bottom-up process.
Okay.
This perspective even expands the idea of the brain to include the entire nervous system. The source calls it the brain on 2 feet.
Brain on 2 feet. I like that.
Yeah. So when we ignore physical sensations, that internal sense of our body, sometimes called interoceptive awareness, it gets much harder to know what's really going on emotionally.
So tuning into the body is key.
Totally. Learning to simply tolerate those physical sensations is crucial for riding the wave, as the source puts it. And it can be simple things like just noticing your breath without trying to change it. That can be incredibly helpful.
Just observing.
Yeah, observing what's happening curiously without judging it. And that gives you the clarity then to decide if you want to keep feeding the thought patterns that are keeping the feeling alive.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about those specific feelings we tend to run from. The source identifies 8 unpleasant feelings that are central to this. What are they?
All right, the 8 core feelings highlighted are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, embarrassment, disappointment, frustration, and vulnerability.
Yep, that pretty much covers the hits list of things I'd probably, try to skip past on my emotional playlist.
Exactly, and that's why they're so important in this framework. They aren't presented as inherently bad feelings.
They're not.
No, they evolved for protection, for survival. Think about our negativity bias and makes us pay attention to potential threats, right? So anxiety, for example, heightens alertness. Disgust stops us, hopefully, from eating poison. Fear keeps us alive. They have a purpose.
So avoiding these particular 8 feelings, that has a special significance, according to this work.
Yes, very much so. Avoiding these specific 8 is seen as a primary root cause of a whole range of issues.
Like what?
Things like low confidence, persistent anxiety, that fear of failure or taking risks, constantly worrying about what other people think, harsh self-criticism. The list goes on.
Wow.
And the assertion here is pretty bold. Getting skilled at managing these 8 specific feelings internally can actually resolve many of those related problems. You might not need to tackle each symptom individually.
Okay, that's huge. Can we zoom in on a couple? Shame feels like a particularly heavy one for a lot of people.
It really does. Shame, in this context, it's linked to feeling fundamentally inadequate or flawed. And it often gets locked in this painful loop with harsh self-criticism. The source makes a distinction between like a general social shame, which can actually have a social function, maybe signaling submissiveness to reduce aggression.
Interesting.
And core shame. And core shame is tied to feeling unlovable, often stemming from chronic exposure to abuse or criticism. That type of shame is deeply damaging. It leads to withdrawal, anxiety, depression.
Yeah, that resonates.
Yeah.
And what about anger? That's another one we're often told to just control or suppress.
And anger is presented quite differently here. It's seen as a protective response and also a tool for social communication.
Okay.
It often shows up when you feel wronged or maybe morally right about something. And expressed constructively, it's a way to let others know they've hurt you or crossed a boundary.
But what about exploding?
Well, the source notes that bottling up anger often leads to later explosions. But the key point is that misusing anger, or exploding, is framed as a decision about how you express it. It's not seen as an inevitable outcome of just feeling the emotion itself.
So feeling angry isn't the problem, it's how you react.
Exactly. The example of David is used. He could express anger constructively at work, but would explode at home. It illustrates that choice point. Constructive expression is possible.
Okay. What about disappointment? That's on the list too.
Yeah, disappointment, it comes from unmet needs or desires or expectations. It really highlights feelings of helplessness or lack of control. And it often catches us off guard because, well, life is uncertain, right?
Totally.
Interestingly, the source notes that expressing disappointment can sometimes inspire empathy in others. And it can even be motivational, prompting you to maybe change course or try something different.
Huh. I never thought of it that way.
It's also contrasted with regret. Regret is more about believing you made a bad decision, whereas disappointment is simply disliking an outcome you didn't control.
Okay, that's a useful distinction. And vulnerability itself is on the list.
Yes, and the material breaks it down a bit. There's what it calls non-conscious vulnerability.
Non-constant.
Yeah, like our innate biological threat detection system, neuroception, it's sometimes called. It's that fundamental awareness, maybe heightened when we see tragic events, that, hey, we are all inherently vulnerable. All the time. We can all be hurt.
Right.
Then there's conscious vulnerability. That's the vulnerability we choose to lean into when we take risks.
Like public speaking.
Exactly. Or sharing your creative work or setting a boundary with someone. And embarrassment and helplessness are often the feelings we identify when we're in that state of conscious vulnerability.
Okay, so if our default is avoidance, and these 8 feelings are the ones we tend to avoid the most, what's the practical tool the source gives us to actually start facing them?
Right. That's where the Rosenberg Reset comes in. It's described pretty simply as the one choice you make.
One choice.
Yeah. The choice to be aware of and in touch with your moment-to-moment experience and to be willing to ride one or more 90-second waves of one or more of those 8 difficult feelings.
And the purpose of doing that?
The purpose is liberation, really.
Yeah.
So you can actually pursue anything you want in life without being held back by the fear of feeling these things.
So it's a conscious decision, then, to turn into the discomfort instead of away.
Precisely. And the mechanism is allowing yourself to fully experience those biochemical surges we talked about and just tolerate the resulting bodily sensations.
Sure.
That's how you truly know what you're feeling emotionally, according to this. And by simply observing it curiously, you gain the power to decide whether you want to keep feeding the thoughts that keep that particular emotional circuit running.
Are there examples of this in practice?
Yeah, the material gives some powerful ones. There's Ansel, who used it at a conference to approach people he really admired. He felt the physical sensations of nervousness, the vulnerability, but realized he could tolerate them for that shortwave, and it led to really valuable connections. And another one, Jim, in a high-stakes business pitch. A competitor tried to rattle him, and his usual reaction would have been rage. But instead, he felt the anger wave rise, stayed present with it, remained composed, and actually won the contract.
That really reframes the whole idea of emotional strength, doesn't it? It's not about not feeling.
Fundamentally, this work argues pretty strongly that emotional strength is not about controlling or shutting down or dismissing your feelings. Trying to do that, it actually leaves you feeling weaker, more exposed.
So what is true emotional strength according to this framework, then?
It's presented as having 2 key parts. First, feeling capable.
Capable.
Yeah, that's the internal ability to effectively handle those 8 difficult feelings within yourself, riding the waves.
Okay, the internal part. What's the second?
Being resourceful, that's the external part. Being able to rely on others, acknowledge your own needs and limits, and feeling comfortable asking for and receiving help when you need it.
And you really need both for true strength.
Absolutely. Both internal capability and external resourcefulness are seen as essential for genuine emotional strength, for building confidence, and just for overall well-being. When you become more aware of your feelings, you feel more capable inside. That makes you more willing to take risks, like Ansel reaching out.
Right.
And being resourceful, asking for help. It's not framed as weakness at all. It's crucial because we're wired for connection, right? It's actually an act of strength that strengthens both you and your relationships.
That makes sense. The example of Krista sounds relevant here, too.
Yes, her story highlights the cost of not doing this. By constantly thinking away her feelings and not setting boundaries, she kept getting taken advantage of. It was only when she allowed herself to actually feel her sadness and her anger that she felt capable enough to set clear limits and change the dynamic.
So if managing feelings is the core skill we need to build, what gets in our way? The material seems to really focus on how our thinking can sabotage us.
Oh, definitely. It puts a lot of emphasis on the patterns of faulty thinking that undermine both confidence and our ability to manage emotions effectively.
Negative thinking seems like an obvious one, but the source goes a bit deeper.
Yeah. It's not just about feeling bad. Negative thinking actively fosters depression, and there's documented evidence of its negative effects on our physical health, too. Things like immune function, inflammation.
Wow.
Positive thinking, on the other hand, has genuinely beneficial effects. The material mentions that evolutionary negativity bias we talked about for survival, but notes that positive emotions actively broaden and build our resources and perspectives.
Okay, so what are some specific faulty thinking patterns we should watch out for?
Well, it highlights common cognitive distortions like all or nothing thinking, seeing things in black and white, no gray areas, no middle ground,
Yeah, I know that one.
or should statements. The source calls it shoulding on yourself. These are incredibly constricting. They often lead straight to frustration or anger. And the suggested fix is pretty simple but powerful. Reframe I should into I can or I choose to or I decide to. That immediately gives you back a sense of choice and agency.
That's a good practical tip. And there was that other intriguing concept, bad emotional math. What's that about?
Ah, yes, bad emotional math. This is a really powerful one. It's when we equate things that aren't actually equal, often linking our actions or feelings directly to our fundamental self-worth.
Can you give an example?
Sure, like failing at a specific task means I am a failure as a person.
Ouch.
Or having ugly feelings like anger or jealousy means I am an ugly person. Or maybe equating who I am fundamentally with what I do for a living or what I have or even what I feel or what I think in a given moment.
Right, defining yourself by temporary states.
Exactly. And that kind of math is incredibly limiting. It makes it really hard to believe that change is even possible because you've defined your core self by these temporary states or actions.
And what about worrying about what other people think? That feels almost universal.
Oh, it's huge. The source calls this outside-in thinking. You're placing your attention, your power outside yourself, constantly trying to guess what others are thinking.
Which you can't really know.
Right. It's often just mind reading and usually involves projecting your own insecurities and judgments onto them.
Yeah.
And frequently, it's used as a distraction, a way to avoid feeling vulnerable yourself. The reality is, most people are probably more worried about what you think of them.
That's probably true. And harsh self-criticism. That seems tightly linked to all of this.
It absolutely is. Self-criticism is presented as a really destructive strategy, its main function. Often, it's to distract you from or disconnect you from feeling those core 8 unpleasant feelings.
How does that work?
Well, it can also operate preemptively, like self-doubt stopping you from taking risks in the first place. Don't try, you'll just fail anyway. So while it might feel like some kind of twisted self-protection strategy, the source argues it ultimately prevents you from fully expressing yourself, from showing up authentically.
The example of Emmy sounds like it fits here.
Perfectly. Despite getting positive feedback, she could only focus on perceived negatives. She dismissed compliments because her self-worth was completely tied to accomplishment, and she was constantly bracing herself for anticipated disappointment from others. That critical voice was trying to protect her, in a way, but kept her stuck.
It sounds like anxiety is often, maybe usually, linked to these unaddressed feelings then.
Absolutely. The source strongly suggests that anxiety often serves as a kind of mask.
A mask.
Yeah, like a vague, overwhelming feeling that covers up the specific, identifiable 8 feelings you haven't allowed yourself to experience or express.
So instead of saying I'm disappointed, I just say I'm anxious.
Exactly. It can feel easier or maybe safer to just say I'm anxious than to admit I'm deeply disappointed or I'm furious, especially if those feelings are directed at someone important in your life.
So the key is identifying the feeling underneath the anxiety.
That's the idea. Identifying and expressing the underlying feeling, the sadness, the anger, the disappointment, is what helps dissipate the anxiety. Like Derek, whose anxiety was masking his deep disappointment about his father. Or the group therapy example where Sally and Jane's anxiety started to fade once they connected with their underlying sadness and anger about their situations.
So anxiety in this view is essentially doubt.
Yeah, doubt in your capacity, both your internal capability to handle the feelings and your external resourcefulness to get support.
Okay.
And the material offers a simple reframing tool here too. Instead of asking those can I questions, which are fueled by doubt, try stating I can.
I can handle this.
Right. It even cites research suggesting that using your own first name when you talk to yourself can actually reduce social anxiety and improve performance. It creates a kind of helpful psychological distance. And it connects to Bruce Lipton's work mentioned in the source, the idea of growth versus protection. When you're constantly in a state of protection, like anxiety, you're draining the energy needed for growth and change.
Okay, but what happens when facing these, let's say, everyday difficult feelings starts to bring up something deeper? Older stuff, like past trauma or unresolved pain. Does the source address that?
Yes, that's a really crucial point it covers. It acknowledges that this is common, even expected, and actually part of the grief process. It introduces the concept of disguised grief.
Disguised grief.
Yeah, the idea that dealing with current difficult feelings can often surface unresolved pain or painful memories from the past that are essentially forms of grief.
So how would you know if what you're feeling is actually this disguised grief?
The source offers some clues, what it calls grief signal words.
These are no words like what?
Things like leftover anger, bitterness, blame, cynicism, holding grudges, hostility, jealousy, chronic negativity or pessimism, regret, resentment, maybe a desire for revenge, sarcasm, or even self-hate. If those words or the memories associated with them keep coming up, they can be indicators of underlying unprocessed grief.
And what does processing that grief actually involve in this context? It's not just feeling sad, right?
No, it's more complex. It's about grieving different aspects of loss. Grieving what you received but didn't deserve, maybe bad experiences, mistreatment. Grieving what you deserved but didn't get, like acknowledgement, support, love. Grieving what never was, missed opportunities, potential unrealized. Grieving what isn't the case now, and maybe grieving what may never be, accepting certain realities.
That's a comprehensive view of grief.
It is. And the process involves reflecting on the memory, identifying which of those 8 core feelings are present in relation to it, really understanding the impact it had on you. Acknowledging the truth of that experience to yourself. That's key, regardless of whether you ever express it to others involved. Then, working towards forgiving yourself and maybe others, letting go of old self-images that were built around that pain, and actively forging a new sense of self based on who you are now. It's about making internal sense of the past experience.
And the transformation that comes from doing that deeper work.
Well, the source suggests that moving through that deeper pain is what truly allows for things like laughter, genuine joy, and real forgiveness to emerge. It leads to deeper, more authentic connections, both with yourself and with other people. It's framed as the fundamental shift from living life reactively, driven by unresolved pain, living by default, essentially to consciously creating your future, living by design.
This whole approach seems like it would naturally build resilience.
Absolutely. I mean, handling change, uncertainty, adversity, that all relies heavily on resilience. And this work defines resilience not just as some innate trait you either have or don't, but as a set of learned skills and attitudes. Key among them are things like flexibility, adaptability, openness, and curiosity.
So our attitude and how we frame things are vital for becoming more resilient.
Definitely. A growth mindset is crucial, believing you can learn and adapt. And also the ability to find, as the source puts it, benefits within adversity.
Benefits within adversity.
Yeah, reframing setbacks not just as endings, but as learning opportunities. This links to the work of psychologist George Bonanno. Perseverance is also highlighted, that never give up attitude needed for pursuing goals. And you can actually tap into sources of inner perseverance by remembering past experiences where you were fearless or determined. Like Corey, the ski dude example, recalling that mindset to overcome panic attacks, or even just thinking about the relentless determination of a toddler learning to walk.
Yeah, they don't give up easily. And the fear of failure, that's another major hurdle for resilience, isn't it?
Huge. And the source reframes this again. Fear of failure is often just that anxiety we talked about, compounded by discomfort with vulnerability, and fueled by that bad emotional math where I failed at this thing gets distorted into I am a failure.
So failure is just data.
From this perspective, yes. Failure is simply data, a learning opportunity. Trust is also reframed. It's not just about trusting other people. Crucially, it's about trusting yourself.
Trusting yourself how?
Trusting your capacity to handle the potential unpleasant feelings or outcomes that might come up if you take a risk, or if you rely on someone else and they let you down.
Trusting your ability to cope.
Exactly. And asking for help, which we touched on before, is reinforced here again as an act of resourcefulness and strength, not weakness. It actually deepens your resilience and your relationships.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this all together. How does all of this managing feelings, changing thinking, building resilience translate into actually building confidence? The source offers 6 key pathways, right?
Yeah, they provide a really great synthesis, kind of pulling it all together.
What are they?
Okay, number 1 is experience. This is about being aware of and trusting those 8 difficult feelings. Handling them helps you navigate ambiguity and uncertainty with more ease.
Okay, experience the feelings. What's next?
Number 2, develop expertise. This is more straightforward, building competence, mastering knowledge or skills in areas that matter to you. That naturally builds confidence.
That makes sense.
3 is experience fully. This loops back to the feelings. It means actively embracing the whole range of your feelings, not just the easy or pleasant ones, noticing, accepting, and trusting the difficult ones too.
Okay.
4 is express yourself. This is about speaking your truth, sharing your thoughts and feelings, but doing it from a place of positivity, kindness, and good intention. This is presented as really essential for creating change in your life and just living authentically.
Mm-hmm.
5, engage boldly, take action, take risks. Confidence isn't just a thought or a feeling, it's built through the doing, stepping out of your comfort zone.
Right. Action builds confidence.
And the last one. Number 6 is embrace esteem. This one's really key. It means actively absorbing and integrating compliments and positive feedback.
Integrating them, not just brushing them off.
Exactly. We often deflect compliments, right? But this is about letting them in, letting them help you update your internal self-image to match the truth you're starting to live and express. It helps counter that common feeling of, oh, if you knew the real me, you wouldn't think I was capable or good.
Yeah, that imposter feeling.
Right. So the source talks about why we dismiss compliments and how allowing them in is vital as you start expressing your authentic self. It even suggests practices like, consciously compiling positive statements or memories, maybe even physically placing your hands over your heart to help really integrate them.
That framework connects the inner work with the outer actions so clearly.
It really does. And ultimately, this whole body of work loops back to the idea of living a life you genuinely love.
How so?
Well, by getting skilled at navigating those 8 feelings and consistently choosing awareness over avoidance, you essentially free yourself up. You gain the capacity to actually pursue what you truly want.
So what are the final steps the source suggests for actually designing that future you want?
It emphasizes 3 components: imagined impact, intentional choices, and inspired action.
Okay.
It encourages creating a really vivid vision of your desired life, maybe looking 3 years out, using all your senses to make it feel real and compelling. And then, importantly, regularly reviewing and refining that vision as you grow and change.
And the ongoing practice needed to keep this alive, to make it stick.
It really comes down to a commitment to the core principles we've discussed. Maintaining awareness, using the reset tool to work with difficult feelings when they arise, consciously choosing vulnerability when appropriate, speaking your truth, taking aligned action, the engage boldly part, embracing your own esteem, checking your attitudes, and reframing negative thinking, committing to ongoing learning and growth, regularly reviewing your vision and celebrating your wins no matter how small, and cultivating gratitude.
It sounds like a continuous journey.
Absolutely. The ultimate message is that confidence is truly an inside job, but it's built and demonstrated through courageous action in the world. And growth isn't always linear, right?
Definitely not.
Small insights can lead to massive shifts, like the story of Liana, who apparently went from dreading a social event to feeling excited about it almost overnight, just by learning and applying the reset concept. It can happen quickly sometimes. And using your core values or desired qualities as guides in stressful moments can also be incredibly powerful, helping you respond from intention rather than just reacting out of habit or fear.
Wow. This deep dive has honestly completely reframed how I think about difficult emotions and their direct link to confidence.
It offers such a practical, almost, biological perspective on something that usually feels so messy and complex.
Yeah. And the core takeaway feels incredibly empowering, doesn't it? That true confidence and living a life you love, it isn't about somehow eliminating difficult feelings or white-knuckling your way through controlling them.
No, not at all.
It's really about the courage to turn toward them, to experience them fully, maybe just 90 seconds at a time for the intense part, and let them inform your growth. Let them move through you.
Exactly. It boils down to consistently choosing awareness over avoidance, being willing to actually feel those 8 often avoided emotions, actively challenging the faulty thinking patterns that keep you stuck, expressing your truth authentically, and fully embracing both your internal capacity to handle feelings and your external resourcefulness to seek and accept support.
So maybe here's a provocative thought from this material for everyone listening to sit with. If anxieties often means you're already experiencing the very feelings you're afraid of, what are you truly waiting for to lean in, ride that wave, and unlock your full potential?